Good afternoon. We are here today to talk about the rise in the number of flu cases in the state of New York and in many other parts of the country. It is a serious situation, and it's a matter of public health, and we have information that we want to communicate today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Howard Glazier, Director of State Operations.
Thank you, Governor. Recently, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention called the 2013 flu season one of the worst in the last decade, and we still haven't had the peak of this flu season. It's a national problem. There are 41 states right now reporting the flu virus. 29 of those states are reporting high or severe levels, and New York has been affected as well. More than 19,000 laboratory-confirmed cases of the flu have been reported in New York since seasonal influenza testing began in October, and it's widespread within New York. In the last week, laboratory-confirmed cases were reported in all 57 counties and all 5 boroughs of the city of New York. The state, through the Department of Health, has taken an aggressive approach to this year's flu season, and today we're expanding our outreach efforts. Those efforts are led by Dr. Nirav Shah, the Commissioner of the State Health Department. He'll take you through a status report on where we are today and our further actions. Dr. Shah.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Governor, for your leadership on this important public health issue. You know, we can't underestimate and understate the importance of the flu vaccination in our fighting the flu in New York State. The numbers really show the scope of the problem here in New York and across the country. Last year, there were only 4,404 confirmed flu cases across all of New York State in the whole season. And this year, we have 5 times as many cases to date, 19,128 confirmed flu cases, and the flu season is not over. As of January 5th, the State Health Department received reports of over 2,800 patients hospitalized with laboratory-confirmed influenza, compared to 1,169 for all of last year. But the good news is that the flu vaccine is readily available. About 135 million doses of flu vaccine have been produced this season. To date, in New York, we've had 2 pediatric deaths from the flu. New York averages about 1,400 deaths per year from the flu. And based on cases so far, we expect that to be worse. I want to stress that it's important and essential for those who have not had a flu shot. It's not too late. The right time to get the flu shot is before you get the flu. To answer the flu problem in New York State, we're doing whatever we can to get as many New Yorkers vaccinated as soon as possible. Under the leadership of Governor Cuomo, the State Health Department has been conducting its annual Flu Action Plan, which was launched in September and runs through the whole flu season. This includes conducting statewide immunizations. Additional flu clinics will be established as needed to make sure that all New Yorkers have access to flu immunizations at times that are convenient and locations that are convenient. For the state workforce, on-site flu clinics for employees will be offered all across the state. New York is conducting a statewide effort to immunize all state workers, including promoting those on-site flu clinics in regions including Buffalo, Syracuse, downstate, and the North Country. The State Health Department, working closely with the county's health departments, regional and private providers, is working very hard to make sure that if you haven't had a chance, you can get it at low to no cost everywhere across the state. The Greater New York Hospital Association and the Hospital Association of New York State, among others, have been working very closely to make sure that healthcare workers in particular have access to flu shots. The State Health Department will continue to issue advisories to healthcare providers, hospitals, long-term care facilities, and local health departments to make sure that anyone who hasn't had the flu shot gets it at the time and place that's most convenient for them. To that end, we have established websites, and I encourage you to go to health.ny.gov to find the closest place where you can get your flu shot. The State Health Department also provides web-based toolkits for influenza vaccination programs in healthcare facilities, also available on our website. In addition to these efforts, On behalf of the governor, I want to remind all New Yorkers that a flu vaccine can be obtained at healthcare providers' offices, local health departments, and for individuals 18 years of age and up at pharmacies across the state. And we recommend that everyone aged 6 months and older get a flu vaccination. We strongly urge all healthcare workers to be immunized. Flu symptoms resemble those of a cold, but come on more swiftly and are more severe. A person with the flu usually has fevers, chills, a severe headache, muscle aches, as well as a cough or sore throat. In the majority of cases, individuals with symptoms of flu should stay home and avoid contact with others. Emergency departments across the state are seeing many more patients, and we ask all New Yorkers with flu symptoms to first contact their primary care provider rather than seek care at an emergency room. Thank you, Governor, for rolling up your sleeve for the people of New York once again. Are you ready for your flu shot?
Well, I am trained actually to provide vaccines, and I'm here, and the doctors here, if any members of the press have not had their flu shot, I would be my pleasure to administer it at this time.
Thank you, Governor.
I actually have not had my flu shot.
Are you allergic to the flu shot? Or
No, I am not.
Good. Glad we checked that out in advance. So, Governor, please roll up your sleeve a little. Thank you. This should hurt just a little.
Just a little. Didn't hurt at all, doctor.
Thank you.
Yes.
And no blood either, but
No
I'll give you a
blood.
Band-Aid anyway.
Thank you.
And Governor, since you were so good at this, I want to offer this to you.
Best treat I've gotten in this job, I want you to know, doctor.
Sugar-free. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Dr. Shaw. And once again, the shots are highly accessible, they're easy, they are painless, and as a matter of public health, your own and others, we strongly advise them. Questions, comments?
Governor, off topic, in Putnam County, they're debating whether the county should release the gun permit regulations. Do you have any thoughts on that? Should the county release those permits? As you know, it's become a controversy.
You know, Rick, I've said in the past that the FOIA laws, the FOIA law, I'll leave it to the local government to make their interpretation of the law, and my guess is in these cases, a court will wind up deciding.
Governor, you mentioned this 10-point plan. I know you had a meeting this morning with some of the women here. Why do this now? What, I guess, made you think to do this year?
You know, I have supported a woman's right to choose all my life, Zach. I supported it, when you say, why now? I supported it last year. I supported it the year before. I've supported a woman's right to choose all my life. I've worked on a lot of these issues, domestic violence, et cetera, all my life. So it's not new in many ways this year. We've supported it every year we've been here.
Governor, Republicans in the past have been resistant to some of these proposals. With this majority coalition right now, do you feel like there's a better chance of it getting past the Senate, and do you think you can get some Republican votes for these measures?
Well, we'll find out, Nick. It didn't pass last year, it didn't pass the year before that, obviously, and we worked on it both years. There's no doubt that the Senate is, by its makeup now, more favorable to these issues, specifically women's right to choose. But there's also no doubt that it is an uphill battle. You need a couple of Republican votes by anyone's count, and no one has identified them at this time. So it is a difficult vote. Looks better than it has in the past, but it is still very, very difficult. But, you know, sometimes there are issues that I believe should be raised and should be fought for, and this one is one of our top priorities.
Governor, what do you think of the characterization in a lot of news stories this morning that you've taken a left turn?
You know, I don't see it, Karen. Last year, they wrote, I made a right turn. This year, they wrote, I made a left turn. You know, I think I've been going straight all along. And I think we've been remarkably consistent here. I said when I ran that we were going to run on a platform of being fiscally responsible and socially progressive. And that is exactly what we have done every year. We started the administration talking about fiscal responsibility, a property tax cap, no new taxes, and focusing on economic development and on marriage equality. You can't have a more quote-unquote left issue, if that's your frame, than marriage equality. This year, we're talking about no new taxes, fiscal responsibility, and marriage equality, which I talked about last year, minimum wage, which we tried to get last year. So I am socially progressive and fiscally responsible. That's what I am. That's what I ran on. That's what the program we've put forth every year. And I believe that's where most people in this state are.
Governor, what do you envision from the Senate? Because it's not just the Reproductive Health Act, but your proposed broadening of the assault weapons ban definition, the indexing of the minimum wage. A lot of these are things that Republicans have said are anathema. I'm wondering, do you expect these measures to be brought to the Senate floor and passed with all Democratic votes? Do you expect Republicans to be sort of negotiating and pairing at these bills to a form where they can vote for them?
Yeah, this gets back a little bit to Karen's question, turned left. I've been working on the issue of gun violence for more years than I care to remember. When I was in the federal government at HUD, I worked extensively on what we called safe guns at that time, the Smith & Wesson Safe Gun Agreement. I worked with mayors, county executives, governors all across the nation. So I've been very active on this issue. I expect the legislature of the state of New York to protect the people of the state of New York. I expect the legislature to pass common sense gun control, and I expect them to pass it this session if they want to be able to go home and say to the people of their district that they were fairly represented. I think to be blind to this issue, given the number of tragedies and the amount of blood shed, I think it would be a dereliction of your public service responsibility not to do something to protect the people of the state of New York. So I hope the legislature passes the initiatives that we're talking about.
Many Democrats have said that, if there was an outright Democratic majority in the chamber, you would pass gun control within the next 5 minutes, and you'd pass the bill that you want to pass. I don't believe that there's much daylight between your proposals and the Democrats in the Senate, or for that matter, the Democrats in the Assembly. So will you be pushing for the proposal as it stands now?
Yeah, of course.
Or will you try to negotiate, will you negotiate with the Republicans, and why?
No, I have been talking to the Republicans for a long period of time. I've been talking to the Democrats. We've been talking about this for weeks. And I will continue to talk. I've never said on any initiative it's my way or the highway, you do that when you want to posture and put out a press release, not when you want to get something done. So I've been talking to both sides for many weeks. I understand their position. They understand my position. I want to get something passed. And I want to get something passed that is effective and aggressive and something that protects New Yorkers.
Governor, there's two former Senate Republicans who were no longer in office, arguably because they're gay marriage votes. Do you think some Republicans are looking at the gun control issue, and you think they might be fearful that they could get attacked from the right flank of their party or the conservative party? And does that give them some pause before backing gun control?
Ricky, there is no doubt that the gun issue is a controversial issue, and there's no doubt that there are extremists, especially, I believe, look, there are extremists on both sides of the debate, right? There are extremists who believe there should be no guns in society, period. Only law enforcement should have guns, and they would take everyone's gun. They don't believe in the Second Amendment. They believe it was written at a different time. So And then you have extremists on the other side who believe, the government has no right to make any law or regulation. And that's what the Constitution provides. So you have extremists on both sides. And I am sure there will be extremists who say, my policies don't go far enough because I allow people to have guns. And I am sure there are extremists on the other side who the Republicans are worried about, which will argue that the government has no right to do this, right? The NRA has a certain contingent which are extreme on this issue, and I'm sure the Republicans are taking that into consideration.
Governor,
you talked a lot about
on your negotiations. Are you hopeful for a vote next week? Senator Scola suggested maybe.
Yeah, one half second to go back to Rick. Look, there are extremists and there is opposition to almost anything you do, right? My point is, do what's right for the people of the state. Do what's right for your district. And I believe the people of this state now are certainly a majority of the people of this state are saying enough is enough, something has to be done, how many lives have to be lost, how many innocents have to be lost. And what we're talking about, we're not talking about, and I tried to make this point yesterday, we're not talking about sportsmen, hunters, we're not talking about guns that are used for hunting. As I said, I own a gun. I own a Remington shotgun. It's a gun that's primarily used for hunting. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about assault weapons. We're talking about high-capacity magazines and assault weapons. That's what we're talking about. And these are not weapons that a sportsman or a hunter uses. And they're just, in my opinion, it is an unnecessary risk. And think about the people of this state. And think about the majority of the people of this state. Well, there are some extremists who I'm going to annoy because they think the government shouldn't make any rules. Yes, you will annoy some extremists, but you will protect the people of your district and the people of this state, and you will follow the will of a majority of the people of this state. I'm sorry, Tom. We've been having conversations, Tom. The legislative session has just started. We don't have any timeline or deadline. I can't give you a timeline as to when or if we will reach an agreement. As I said, there's a balance. One of the questions before suggested. I would like to get a bill passed. To get a bill passed, I need the Senate and the Assembly, but I want to get a strong, aggressive bill passed. I want to get it done quickly, but I want the right bill passed. So I don't have a timeline. We have been talking for weeks, literally, and we have not come to an agreement. And the session's just started.
What are the sticking points right now?
It's the, what you would expect. The numbers of controls, and the Republicans want less. I want more. The Democratic Assembly, some of the measures that the Republican Senate wants are increasing criminal penalties, and the Assembly has sensitivity about that.
Colonel, what would you like to see happen to the assault weapons that are out there now that were purchased legally in the state, that are in the hands of gun owners in the state?
Glenn, I don't want to negotiate this bill in public, and I don't want to raise a number of options that could be misinterpreted or could just generate more discussion than has already been generated on too little facts. So I want to finish having the conversations with the legislature and do that in private.
Is that a sticking point in the talk?
Yes.
Governor, you talked a lot yesterday about New York being a leader when it comes to gun control laws and women's rights laws. I mean, are you trying to do what maybe not going on in Washington, or try to get out ahead of some of the national debate on this issue?
Joe, I had turn left, turn right, turn about face. I have been doing exactly what I said I was going to do in my announcement speech. I said we're going to restore New York as the progressive capital of the nation. Remember that? You've heard that line so many times, I am sure. I've talked about how New York led all the great progressive movements. The environmental movement, the women's rights movement, the gay rights movement, all started in New York. New York is the progressive capital. I want to restore New York as the progressive capital. I said that in my announcement speech and every speech since, and that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I believe we did with marriage equality. That's what I believe we can do with gun control. But I believe that is a major part of the legacy of this state. And it is a positive part of the legacy of this state. New York as the laboratory of the American experiment of democracy. New York had one of the most sophisticated governments earlier than other states. We had a diverse population. We were the first, historically, one of the first states to deal with these highly complex, controversial issues. So states looked to New York. Many of the federal laws were based on New York laws. So that's who we are. That's what we do. That is our history, and that's something to be proud of. And I've said that all along, and I'm going to keep that going. So there's nothing new there. And then forget on the issue of guns, the main point here is not a precedent for other states. The main point here is keep your people safe. Keep your people safe. People should not unnecessarily lose their life. We started with the story of Webster at the State of the State. That is very personal to New York. Connecticut shooting was just miles from here. Keep your people safe. That's what the gun issue is about.
When you talk about tourism in upstate and you talk about casinos, how do you define upstate, and are there any pinpointing locations upstate where those casinos may go?
North of the Bronx.
Spoken like somebody from Queens.
But Governor, that would presumably include Yonkers where there is a
We
harsh
have not, for purposes of the statute, we haven't defined upstate New York. But the point is not the New York City metropolitan area, right? Because if you put a casino in the New York City metropolitan area, frankly, the casino operators would be less interested in citing them in upstate New York. Because if there was a casino in New York City, they believe that would be the primary casino in the state. And people would go then to New York City, it's a tourism destination to begin with, and you would have a casino. We want to do the exact opposite. No casino in New York City. Casino upstate, and try to attract the 8 million people from New York, the 50 million tourists from New York City per year, get them to go upstate and use the casino/resort destination as the magnet to bring people up. What is upstate? Where do you draw the line? Is it the Bronx? Is it Westchester? Is it Rockland? Is it Putnam? That is going to be a subject of discussion in the legislation with the legislature. It's obviously a big point.
I'd end up with the
Would
three.
you include Western New York in that, which would obviously be a violation of the compact with the Senecas?
We're in arbitration on those agreements, and we would honor legal agreements that are in good standing.
And could you just, in December, you penned the op-ed where you talked about litmus test of issues. Which of your new proposals from yesterday would you add to that list?
All of them, Tom.
So if a legislator...
Whole 300-page book.
All 300?
Yep, a long test, big test, long list.
Okay. So if legislators oppose this, you're going to oppose that? Is that
My point was, the conversation was, who do you support of these political factions and personalities? And my point is, I don't want to make a decision on that basis. I'm not really concerned, and it's not my business constitutionally, to be concerned with the organization of a separate branch of government, the legislature. And I'm not going to get involved in discussions of power sharing agreements, et cetera. What is my business is how the legislature acts and how the legislature votes. So you tell me whether or not they voted and how they voted on issues that are relevant to the people of this state, and I'll tell you what I think of them. Next question, well, what issues do you think are relevant to the people of the state of New York? Here they are, and I did a list. These are the issues that I believe are important to the people of the state of New York. You tell me how they vote on those issues, I'll tell you what I think of them. I also said caveat, I haven't done the State of the State yet. State of the State is then going to have obviously a new agenda, which is what we did yesterday, and you tell me how they vote on those issues, how they respond to our agenda, and I'll tell you my opinion of them and my opinion of their performance.
Governor, are you concerned that Hurricane Sandy anyway has crowded out your agenda? In other words, with all those additional items, on the list that need to be accomplished, are you worried that some of these other, notions and issues that you're backing are going to get pushed to the side?
No, because look, first of all, the way it works practically is Hurricane Sandy, and to the extent it's a legislative responsibility, it's basically a congressional, Washington-based discussion, right? This legislature isn't doing much in terms of Hurricane Sandy, nor should they. It's a federal matter. So I don't see it as taking time there. Does it take time, a tremendous amount of time from the administration? Yes. And we had a choice to make early on when the hurricane happened. We need to be attentive to that part of the state and those needs, but not to eclipse everything else we were doing. We didn't have the luxury, and I think it would have been a violation of our responsibility to say, well, now we have to focus on the storm, and that's where our attention goes, and therefore we're going to neglect other areas. What we did in the State of the State, which went on a tad long, I know it didn't feel that way to you, Zach, but Kaplan was squirming, I was noticing. The reason it went long is because it's a long agenda, because it's everything that we needed to do in year 3 to keep that agenda going. It's year 3 of our economic development empowerment, year 3 of economic development initiatives upstate. It's year 3 of education. It's year 3 of fiscal responsibility. It's year 3 of balanced budgets. It's year 3 of everything that we were doing in year 1 and 2, plus what you need to do for Hurricane Sandy, plus what you need to do for gun control, because it's long overdue, and there's now a moment in time where something can actually be done. So literally, it's year 3 of an already robust agenda, because we already had a robust agenda. It's year 3 of a robust agenda plus 2 major initiatives.
No casinos in New York question.
I'm sorry, Aaron?
No casinos in New York City question. Couldn't you write into the law that 1 or 2 would be in New York City, and therefore casino operators would be interested in them because they could also build upstate?
You would have, well, the big proposals are going to be the first ones, right? And for the operators, for the competition, I believe there's a threshold. If there was going to be one in the city, then that would be the option that most operators would want to bid on. What we're trying to do is take that off the table to begin with, and then the interest does go upstate, because their thinking is the New York City market is going to go somewhere. Could go to Atlantic City, could go to Connecticut. If you had an upstate destination, that would be arguably more proximate, more associated with the New York City market. That's where you would get that New York City traffic. And they are willing to invest in that.
What do you say to folks upstate who would look at your speech yesterday with its emphasis on the upstate economy and initiatives for the upstate economy, including casinos, and say, well, that's all so that he doesn't have to do fracking, since he didn't mention that in the speech?
I said before we went into the speech that I was not going to mention fracking, because it had nothing to do with the speech. Where fracking is we're doing a review of fracking on the merits. We're now looking at the health consequences of fracking, as you know. That has nothing to do with the state of the state. And that is some tortured conspiratorial analysis to say, because he doesn't want to do fracking, which no one ever said, I mean, you'd have to assume a fact, it wouldn't be the first time, but you'd have to assume that fact, then we were doing casinos upstate. That's it. A tad stretch, even for some of your friends.
How did you get to 3 casinos as opposed to the number that I think was originally proposed, about 7 casinos statewide?
Two different things, Nick. The referendum would say up to 7 for purposes of changing the Constitution. The referendum on the ballot would say up to 7. We're saying that's the constitutional change. Phase 1, up to 3 upstate. And that would be the first law. You would then theoretically, if you passed a referendum and you passed this law, you'd have 4 more that you could do down the road within the Constitution.
Do you think that makes it easier to pass?
I'm sorry, excuse me 1 second. Jimmy, yes, Nick?
Having only 3 for now, do you think that makes it easier to pass both in the legislature on second passage and then in that voter referendum?
I don't know. You can argue it both ways. You could say that when you don't have one in New York City, the New York City delegation, which probably on the numbers is the biggest faction, now has no incentive to vote for it because New York City's not going to get one. I'm sorry, Jimmy.
How long do you envision between phase 1 and phase 2?
We have not thought about phase 2, just phase 1.
Governor, does that mean that there will never be a casino in New York City? I mean, if up to 7 in the future there could be any.
No, there could be, and there could be a phase 2, and there could be casinos in New York City. You'd have to see how it goes. First, does phase 1 happen? Do you get 1, 2, or 3? When do they come online? How much of a market was there? And then you'd make that determination down the road in phase 2.
I apologize, I stepped on my own follow-up earlier. So do you...
I hate when that happens. I do that all the time, by the way.
So do you oppose, of the 3 that would go upstate, do you oppose that any of those would be allowed in Western New York?
We're not going to violate any contracts that are in good standing. So you'd have to look at the contract. If it says there's an exclusivity geographically, then we're not going to violate any contract that's in good standing.
So you would oppose?
If there is a contractual agreement not to that is binding, then we wouldn't.
And is there a contractual agreement that's binding?
Well, it depends on where, right, geographically. There are different, some parts of upstate are under contract, some places aren't.
Governor, bringing it back to the flu just for a second, does New York State require health care professionals to get the flu shot?
Does it require healthcare professionals to get the flu
We
shot?
strongly encourage, and we are continuing to work with the healthcare community to try to get everyone who cares for people to get their flu shot.
Very strongly encourage, very strongly encourage.
Minimum wage shot this year so much worse than previous years. Why are we seeing that?
Yeah, every year, depending on the different strains that are out there, we have different immunities, and some are more virulent than others. This year, there are some pretty bad strains out there. The good news is that the flu shot covers about 90% of people who get the flu will be protected. That's a very good protection rate. So this year it's bad, last year it wasn't so bad, next year it could be, we don't know.
Governor, minimum wage $8.75. How did you come to that figure? And do you expect that particular issue to be as controversial now that there's gun control is more controversial, but in the past Republicans have not supported minimum wage hike? How do you expect that to be met?
I tried very, very hard to get it passed last year, and I failed. So dealing with basically the same cast of characters. So it is no doubt an uphill battle. So it's going to be hard.
Governor,
In your speech, you said you wanted 10% of the revenue from casinos to go to property tax relief. How does that square with the Constitution, which says all of the proceeds should go to education?
All of the proceeds from all gaming.
Correct. Well, from the lottery. Well,
It's just lottery.
I withdraw the question.
Back to the flu, there was an effort several years back to mandate that healthcare workers get flu shots. Are you considering trying that again? Apparently, it didn't work. This would be for either.
Well, you know, when you mandate anything in healthcare or anywhere, you have to set up a whole regulatory mechanism to make sure it happens. The reality is you get much better compliance if you could get everyone to buy in to getting the flu shots in the first place. We're on the other end of the spectrum. We're really working hard with the unions, with healthcare workers, with everyone, with the associations, to really get buy-in and make them do what's right for their patients.
Governor, how would that 10% property tax, how would that work? Would you give direct cash payments to localities from the casinos?
It would be effectively a subsidy to the localities. Is the locality, the town, the county, that would have to be worked out. But it would be, yes, it would be a...
For the localities that are host communities to the casinos?
Yes.
Or-
Just so I'm clear on this.
Also, Tom, what we said in the proposal was the support of the local community, local governments would be a factor in the selection. We want to, our proposal is the Gaming Commission does the selection, keep it away from the political process, but a factor would be counties that want it versus a county that doesn't want it, local communities that support it versus local communities that don't support it would be a factor in the selection. I don't know what the number of points or what percentage, but I would suggest that it's a significant factor in the selection.
But not a local referendum or a county legislature vote?
Well, you get to the same place, Tom, because if the county didn't support it, then it probably wouldn't win the competition. County did support it. I don't know if it's county or town, but if the county did support it, then it would have a leg up, if you will, in the competition.
So do you envision when the vote in November, the public would already know what locations these casinos were going to be? So people will go to the polls knowing that there'd be one in the Catskills and one in northern, like...
You could theoretically, the public would know at a minimum whether or not this law passed.
But the law that's going to pass is just going to say up to 7. It's not going to say...
Well, the referendum is going to be up to 7. This proposal under phase 1 would be up to 3 upstate. So at a minimum, they would know when they go to the polls. The referendum says up to 7. Constitution changes up to 7. Right now, the only plan is up to 3, and they are all upstate. They probably would not know where in upstate. They probably would know the definition of upstate. I don't know that you could get a competition run and concluded by November. I think that would be doubtful.
Don't you think one would be in the Catskills? I mean, when the law was initially passed in 2001, there's going to be 3 casinos in the Catskills, 3 in Western New York. Do you think the Catskills will probably be one of the places here?
I think the Catskills are an obvious area to be competitive in the competition, but I would leave it open, Joe. See, I wouldn't say in the Catskills. First of all, maybe the Catskills doesn't want one. Maybe one county does and another county doesn't. So I would leave it open. And also, you would let the market and let the experts tell us where the optimum location is to site a casino to maximize revenue. I'm not in the casino business. I don't know if it should be in Sullivan. I don't know if it should be in Albany. I don't know if it should be in Utica. It's not my business. I'd be curious to see what the best operators, we'd get the best operators on the planet bidding here, by the way. Where do they think the best locations are to maximize revenue?
Are you concerned then, if you put these casinos, what it's going to do to the VLT facilities? I mean, there have been record profits at those that continue to do well. If you put the casinos, are you going to take away from the racinos that you have around the state?
Well, look, I think the casinos would get, the casino operator, my guess is, would want to maximize, would want to reduce their own competition, so they wouldn't be interested in siting next to a neighboring facility. I believe the racinos are basically casinos anyway. That's how they hold themselves out and represent themselves. So my guess is they would avoid that by just functioning of the marketplace.
You said bidding for these. How much do you think each casino would get in a bid, whether it's a franchise fee or however you...
I have no idea, Yancey. I have no idea what the market will bear. I think the bids will be much higher if there is no casino in New York City. and no plans for a casino in New York City, because that is the big market. That's what they've all said to us. They want that New York City market.
Would there a franchise fee or some other mechanism be part of the bidding that casino companies would have?
You could, but, yeah, you could, but that's, you can slice the salami any way you want, right? They're going to be willing to give you a certain amount of money for the franchise and a certain amount of money for the franchise to be paid through a percentage of the revenue. You want to call it a franchise fee, you want to call it a tax, you want to call it a profit sharing with the locality, whatever you want to call it, you can call it, but they'll have a number in their mind of what they're willing to pay for that franchise.
Do you include any money in your upcoming budget in terms of revenue from casinos?
We're not there yet. We have to look at the budget, Tom.
Governor, speaking of the budget, your teacher incentives program, how would that be paid for?
We have to look at the budget.
Cardinal Dolan wrote you a letter in which he reacted to your speech. He liked some of it, but he pointed out, he said the abortion rate in New York State is 40%. In some low-income neighborhoods of New York City, it's up to 60% higher. Do you agree with him that those numbers are too high and you have an agenda for addressing that?
You know, Bill, no one, I don't believe that abortion is ever the preferred option, right? That's a different discussion than who should make the decision and a woman's right to choose, which I hold adamantly. But adoption alternatives are obviously preferable. Intelligent use of birth control are obviously preferable. The church, I respect their opinion. I respect their rulings. It's a very important institution in the state. It's very important to me personally. I'm happy when we agree. I wish we could agree on everything. That's not the way the world works. I understand the church disagrees with me on my policies on choice. I understand the church disagreed with me last year on my decision on marriage equality. And, you know, we agreed to disagree, and we move forward.
But are there any things the state can do to make abortion less common?
The state has aggressively pursued, first, education on birth control, alternatives, adoption as an alternative.
How do you feel your meeting with the women's group went this morning?
It went very well, very well. They're very excited. There's a lot of energy. I'm excited. What the Women's Equality Agenda does is it takes up many issues that have been percolating for a long time. Rights of victims of domestic violence, freedom from discrimination in housing, freedom from discrimination in lending, human trafficking. Many of these issues have been pursued for a long period of time. It unites them, and it stresses the commonality among these issues, which the commonality was they're all basically saying women are discriminated against in certain circumstances. And there are places where women are treated unfairly. So let's look at the question of how women are treated in society, and let's focus on those areas where there may be an injustice done to women. That's what putting it all together says. And sometimes you can get caught in the weeds on these issues. And I think the collective frames the issue higher. It's about women's equality and the way we treat women in society. And in my opinion, we have to do a better job in that regard, because there are areas where women are treated unfairly and women are discriminated against. And just on the fact that they're women, what that video was trying to say, we ran a video during the State of the State that had 2 infants in cribs, and said they're basically born in identical places, under identical circumstances, but the trajectory of their life is fundamentally different. Or statistically, the trajectory of their life is fundamentally different. Why? Why? They've just been born. They haven't done anything, and everything that has happened has been identical. Why should they have a different trajectory? Because one happens to be a girl. Well, that is repugnant to the very concept of this country, of the Constitution, equal opportunity, everything we strive for. And it was jarring. The facts are jarring. I mentioned that I'm the father of 3 girls. You know, I see life in many ways through their eyes. And I do believe there are circumstances where women are discriminated against and women are prejudiced. And they need attention and they need to be rectified. And part of this is saying to society, you know, let's think about this and let's talk about this. And then the specifics within that.
Governor, do you envision it as being a simple matter of law? Obviously, we have non-discriminations. There are some female leaders, feminists, who argue that it's more a question of just balancing. Women have these opportunities, but many make sacrifices for family. And that one of the real solutions are things like more extensive family leave, policies that make the workplace more friendly, and things that apply not just to mothers but to fathers that some European countries are doing. Do you envision that as more the solution, or is it a simple matter of tweaking the law?
Well, here we're talking about a law, right? But to the extent it's an issue for social discussion, Jimmy, I think it's a good issue for discussion because I think it's a little bit all of the above. And it's a little bit for each person to look in the mirror and for each person to search their soul, right? Because part of this is about a bias and an opinion. And do you treat women differently than you treat men?
Do we need more paid family leave? Is that something that you think should be a part
That's
of
not
this?
in the agenda. We have the items in the agenda.
Thanks, everybody.
When you brought the women's groups together, when did you decide to do that? Because there was a big reaction yesterday. Did that prompt this morning's meeting? Or was it
We had intended to bring the groups together before the speech. All of those issues that we raised, that now have to become a reality, State of the State lays out a plan, right? We want to pass a women's equality agenda. We want to pass campaign finance reform. We want to pass minimum wage. Now, we have to put together an effort to communicate on each one of those issues. So we put together the women's groups, we'll be putting together the campaign finance groups, et cetera, to come up with a strategy on how we're going to communicate, and then we'll roll that out across the state, because the equation is always the simple equation is always the same. If I am left to the discussion in this business, with all due respect to you, my friends in this room, we lose. I win when I communicate with the people, and I get the people on board, and then the politicians follow. That's what's worked for the first 2 years, and I hope it works in the third year. Thank you.
Were you working with going through these issues to try to get the public's attention on each of these issues, working with the Committee to Save New York, and particularly will they be involved in the campaign finance part of this?
Every group is going to make their own determination on what they support and what they don't support. And every person will also. Thank you very much.